Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. So I've just got back from competing in Portugal, and in today's video I'm going to be talking all about post-show as a bikini competitor. Post-show is a really big topic when looking at becoming a competitor or if you already compete. There's lots of different aspects that we can cover, and we're going to talk about the effects of a prep, how that leaves you feeling after a show, both physically and mentally. I'm going to look to break this down into a couple of different episodes so you can understand a little bit more into how to tackle that post-show period. If you do enjoy this video, please let me know by hitting the like button. If you haven't already, subscribe to my channel. Hit that bell to alert you every time I post a new video every Monday, and any comments in the comments section below would be awesome. So today is a prime time for me to start looking at sharing with you the experiences that you get after competing. I'm 1 week from the show that I did on Monday the 7th of December. So I've had a week of different emotions, reflecting on my performance and just coming to terms with coming out the back of a prep. My prep was 21 weeks in total. I came off the back of an off season where I was looking to gain as much muscle as I could. And then I led into my pro debut, which, like I said earlier, took place in Portugal. So for those 21 weeks of my prep, the focus is very high on that date in mind, but also in my off season, which lasted around 10 months. My focus was to gain muscle mass to be able to compete with the pros. So we're looking at, 15 to 16 months of focus on one show. You compete, and then the following day you wake up and you realise that date is now gone. And that can leave you feeling very, very strange because you've been so focused on that date. So I want to look to share with you some top tips on how you can tackle this and how you can be as objective as possible when coming out the back of a show. My first tip is to look at planning your post-show period as much as possible. Now, depending on where you're at as a competitor, so whether you're a first-time competitor or you're looking to compete again, then you still need to have an element of planning as to what you want to do after your show. If it's a show that could qualify you for a further show, potentially that same year, then the attack you have may be different to if it's your first time show, you're looking to compete once, see how you get on, and then you're going to look at going into an off season where you need to gain a little bit more muscle and focus the energies on building muscle mass and then competing again. No matter what way you look at this, if you can start to plan and digest how you're going to attack your post-show period, it really will help you get to grips with psychologically committing to that next phase as a competitor. Okay, so let's delve into this a little bit more. So the first one I spoke about there was if you do multiple shows. Now this could be either doing a qualifier and then getting your place at the finals, or it might be that you want to compete with a couple of different federations. So if you're looking to compete multiple times throughout a season, then you want to look at your post-show period facilitating you getting as much recovery as you can in between those shows, but also staying on track to be able to keep bringing a really good package to the stage. So if it's that you qualify at your show for the finals, you can't 100% guarantee this. So there's not always as much planning can go into the post-show period until you know if you've qualified for your spot at the finals. But you can still start to get your head around how you're going to tackle that post-show period. If you're going to do multiple federations and you know the shows that you're going to compete in, you've got the dates, you can tackle this a lot more objectively because you have those dates in mind. I also spoke about if you're going to look to go into an off season straight off the back of competing. And that's going to be a very different structure to if you're going to compete multiple times throughout a season. I want to go into the main fundamentals of making your post-show period as structured as possible. Those 3 scenarios that I've just mentioned, we can apply to my top tip number 1 of planning your post-show period. Now, what I mean by this is considering what you're going to do off the back of your show. Now, I've experienced all 3 of those scenarios, and the one overriding factor is that coming off the back of a show, you're going to feel a roller coaster of emotions, and you're going to experience highs and lows of how you feel about yourself, your performance, and you are going to be fatigued from that long period of time in a deficit. So by bringing in that element of planning as to how you're going to attack the next phase as a competitor, it really can help to just give you a little bit of clarity and peace of mind at that period of time where your thoughts may not be completely rational. You know, prep is hard and it's going to take a lot out of you. So don't expect to come out the back of a show and feel ready and pumped for your next phase straight away. So what do I mean by planning that post-show period? Let's look at 3 elements that are going to fall under my first tip of planning. The first one is what you're going to do directly after you compete. You've got your date of your show, you've prepped, you've competed, and you have the result of where you've placed, how you've got on. Now, it doesn't matter what your next move is going to be as a competitor. You've still got the rest of that day to experience some time with family and friends, potentially, to maybe have some foods that you haven't had for a while. There's an element of letting go, releasing a bit of stress, and just being able to relax around those people that are really close to you. So what you can do is look to pre-plan that evening of the show or that next day, depending on what sort of time you're competing on the day. And by getting your head around planning that before you compete and before you're put in that scenario, it can help just take any stress out of, you know, coming off stage, all your family and friends are there, and suddenly it's, what do I do now? Ultimately, whether you're going into an off season, whether you're going to do multiple shows, you still need to consider that initial period after you compete. If you're an experienced competitor and you know you're going to compete again, you're pretty used to the post-show period, you're not too worried about going out for a meal, celebrating as it were. It might be that you're just going to stick to your food in the day on show day, and then you're maybe going to go back to your hotel, relax and have your favourite bowl of oats. And it may be that you then the next day go straight back on plan and you compete your second time, and it leads on very nicely there. If you're going into that off-season phase, suddenly it can feel quite overwhelming that you've competed, you've then got that time where you can potentially eat what you want or, you know, go out for a meal and celebrate. How are you going to tackle that and not potentially lead into a binge or not knowing what to do, having a bit of a, you know, mental block when you get to your restaurant, where you get to where you're going to celebrate? So start to think about how you could tackle this. If you are looking to go out and celebrate with your friends, your family after your show, I personally would look to choose somewhere that you like, somewhere where you're going to enjoy different foods, and somewhere where it feels like you can celebrate your success, but you're not at risk of going too OTT after your show. Now, trust me, I've been there and I've had periods of binge type behaviour after a show because I felt that I should be doing that. I've dieted for 20 plus weeks. All I've wanted is biscuits, cakes, chips, burgers. And actually, when you get to that point of post-show and suddenly all this food is available, it becomes very overwhelming, especially if it's your first time. So I would recommend that you look to, if you want to go for a meal, somewhere nice, somewhere where you can still have an element of control. So you can maybe have a 3-course meal, nice portion sizes, palatable experience, but not go absolutely apeshit and eat till you feel sick. So that's the sort of thought process that I would recommend that you take. Like I say, if you're a multiple time competitor and you're happy with this period, it might be that you're just going to go back, crack on with your plan, and then compete a second or a third, fourth time, depending on how many shows you have lined up. If you do a show earlier in the season and you qualify for the finals, which is later in the season, then it might be that you can fit in a bit of time out with family and friends after the qualifying show. And again, I would recommend the same sort of thing. If you're going to go for a meal, if you're going to experience different foods, start to get your head around what you actually want to achieve from that post-show period. When you're celebrating, when you're having a nice meal, try to make sure it's actually something that you're going to look forward to and that you can enjoy, and it's not going to leave you feeling like you've regretted eating certain foods or, exhibited certain behaviors. The second point I want to raise under that umbrella of planning your post-show period is what you're going to do for that following week after a show. I personally would recommend that you have a little bit of time out from things like work. Try and potentially bring back the social interaction during that post-show period. So what I mean by that is have some downtime, allow yourself to absorb your show, how you got on, that you're coming out the back of a prep. Try and factor in some things that you really enjoy that give back to you, your mind and your body. So things like, if you enjoy yoga, you could book maybe a yoga retreat or some yoga classes. It might be that you want to take some time away from tracking your food. So whether you're a food tracker, whether you're on a meal plan, whatever that may be, it might be that you're going to have some time away from that for maybe a week or so. Have a think about some things you want to incorporate, but also try not to overthink and essentially put yourself on a food plan without monitoring it. So if you start to think, I'm going to have that, but I must offset it by doing that, you're almost entering that mind warp of trying to offset too much after a show. If you can commit yourself to having a bit of downtime and you're wanting to come away from, say, weighing all your food out, try to let your mind relax a little bit during that period as well. So go for things that your palate wants, but have sensible portions. It's all about trying to get your head around having that downtime after a diet, but also maintaining an element of control. You don't want to just go completely apeshit with all the foods that you haven't had during your prep and leave you feeling really, really overwhelmed and stressed by your potential choices. So have some thought into what you can do that following week after a show, just to give a little bit of time back to you, a bit of clarity, and minimize the interaction you need, the energies you need to spend on others, and just focus on a little bit of self-care. And the third thing I'd look to do is minimize the commitments directly after your show. So certainly, at least for that first week, like I say, look to plan what you're going to do directly after the show. Start to incorporate some elements of self-care, understand what you want to do in that first week. But look to give yourself a bit of an open calendar. Don't start putting a load of things in the diary and then you come out the back of your show potentially feeling pretty fucked, and then you've got to commit to all these things, traveling to see maybe friends and family, or going out for a long day out with your other half, all these types of things that they can come a little bit later on. Don't think that you're going to compete and then suddenly feel full of energy to do all the things that you haven't had energy to do while you've been in prep mode. So allow yourself that time to just absorb. It's 1 week. and then start to look at putting things in the diary when you understand how you feel after your show. So before we move on to my tip number 2, I'd love to see some comments from anyone looking to compete for the first time, or if you've competed before, and to share your plans for your post-show period, or things that you've maybe experienced if you've competed before that would be valuable for other competitors to have a look at and help the understanding between all of us as competitors as to how we can tackle this period as best as possible. Now, leading on to tip number 2, and that's to manage your expectations. As a competitor, we can start to go into that mode of feeling like we should always be on it at every single moment of every single day. Especially in prep, there's an element of needing to be that way. You need to formulate routines because you've got a lot of things that you need to box off every single day. It's very hard to have that element of taking your foot off the gas as a competitor in a diet getting ready for a show. But after your show, and especially if it's your first time competing, you can sometimes feel like you're gonna be setting the world alight. You're not needing to potentially diet at that present moment. You've maybe got a bit of time out and you want to do all these things that you haven't been able to commit to during your prep. So like I said, in the element of planning, don't look to commit to too many things. And that feeds into managing your expectations of what you're actually capable of after a show. It's a tough period of time. You know, it would be unrealistic to think that you're not going to feel pretty battered after that period of dieting and leading into a show. I'm going to give you a little bit more substance using my experience behind what I mean here by managing your expectations. So when I first started out as a competitor, for my first 3 shows, when I look back, I can see that I didn't have what it took to be able to get those top placings as a competitor. I had minimal muscle mass, my posing needed a hell of a lot of work, and as an overall package, I wouldn't have got the placings that I was perhaps striving for in my mind. I can look back at that now, but at the time, my expectation was if I did not place top 6, I had not done enough to be able to call myself a competitor. And for the first 3 to 4 years of competing, if I told people that I was into bodybuilding and they asked me if I competed, I would avoid answering and telling people that I've competed before and that I was a competitor. Because I hadn't placed and I didn't feel comfortable calling myself an athlete, a competitor, I didn't feel I had earned the right to be able to do that. That's very much an internal thing for me, and some of you may be able to relate. But what I was doing there was setting my expectations way too high for where I was as a competitor. I was putting pressure on myself to place top 6 for the wrong reasons. And when I first started my journey, yes, it was for an internal gratification, but I was searching for a placing. I was competing to get that placing rather than competing for myself and to see myself evolve into a competitor. You've then got the scenario of when I won my first show. I thought that when I won a show, the next day I'd wake up and my life would be complete. I thought that I would never want for anything again. I thought that I would have this internal gratification that I was, first of all, able to call myself a competitor, but also that nothing else would ever trouble me again, because I've been striving for that for so long, and I cannot tell you how important it was for me to one day place at a show. It became a different journey for me that first time I won a show, and I was still able to remain humble and go into each show with the element of wanting to place and to potentially win, but also being able to be realistic that we all prep as competitors to get on that stage, and I'm not always going to be what the judges are looking for. And it's not always an easy pill to swallow that you're not going to win every single show that you do. But being a bodybuilder means you are part of a subjective sport. Every judge has criteria, but they're going to be drawn towards different athletes, different aesthetics, different looks. And that is the way it is when you're looking at bodybuilding as a competitive sport. So when you look at managing your expectations, my biggest bit of advice would be is that you nail your prep, you go into your show knowing you've done everything in your power you can, and whatever the result is, you've competed for you. And this is where the you do you comes into play. If you can compete for yourself, for your own self-respect, self-worth, your journey is going to be far better than if you're competing for someone else, for Instagram likes, for all the reasons that potentially are going to set you up to feel huge amounts of pressure, when actually you are the one prepping, you are the one committing to diets, to off seasons, and you are the one that wants to enjoy your time on stage. If you feel too much pressure, it can take away from that experience. And I've been there, like I've said, and I really do hope to get across as much as possible that if you can focus on your own performance and what you've achieved to get to the stage each time you compete, you're going to feel far greater achievements and self-gratification than if you put too much pressure on yourself before the show, on show day, and then after you compete. And this truly does lead into how you're going to feel after your show. If you're managing your expectations by going into each show to absolutely do your best, then you're able to come out the back of a show and say to yourself, I did everything in my power to get there and look and perform at the best of my own ability. If you put too much pressure on yourself to get a certain place in, to win, that post-show period is going to potentially be a very dark place. So if you can start to get to grips with being able to expect that you do your best, then it will definitely help how you feel off the back of each show. It's also worth mentioning here that if you are planning to have an off-plan meal after your show or have a few days off after you compete, you automatically think when you've been dieting that those few days or even that one meal is going to give you huge amounts of energy. You're going to be able to go and do hours of cardio. You're going to be able to train heavy straight away. And all of these things are going to be within your realms of what you want to do after you compete. Now, let me tell you, it's not the case. One meal or even a week of not sticking to your macros or following your meal plan, you've just dieted for a long period of time. It's not even going to touch the surface. You feel like all of these foods are going to give you bundles of energy, but actually your body is going to be in a really fatigued state, and actually that food is going to go in very easily, and the return you maybe won't feel straight away. It's going to take a bit of time to recover. It can be up to 6 months before you actually feel half human again. And that's what comes from prepping and dieting for those periods of time. So don't expect that you're going to have all of this energy and that you can commit to all these different things after your show. Give yourself a minute. Take that time out and manage your expectations by not expecting too much. And that's really what I want to try and get across here. Don't expect yourself to want to even do these things. It may be that you just want to lay there for, have naps, have a lay-in, have a nice, slow, long walk. Not hours on cardio or loads of time at the gym. Do what feels right for you, and expect less, and if you feel better, you can then add bits of activity in, commit to certain things when you feel ready, rather than rushing yourself and expecting too much. So just allow a bit of time, take it for what it is, and understand that when you come out of a prep, out of a show, allowing that period of recovery is going to help you attack the next phase as a competitor. I really do hope you've enjoyed this video, guys, and I look forward to next Monday sharing a little bit more information about tackling the post-show period as a competitor. If you did like this video, then hit the thumbs up, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and hit the bell to alert you every time I post a new video every Monday. I look forward to seeing you next week. For now, peace out.